"I sold your car." That is what my brother said to me. He did not even look up from his phone. He just crumpled a receipt and threw it at my chest like I was a wastebasket. He sold my Honda. The car I paid for every single month. The car I drove to work every single day. He sold it to cover a champagne bill for investors who did not even invest. And when I stood there in shock asking how he could do that, he smirked and said, "It is titled, 'In my name,' remember? Your credit was trash, so I did you a favor. Legally, it is my property, and I liquidated it. I barely got enough to cover the champagne. Next time, buy a better car if you want it to matter." That was Tuesday. By Thursday, he had thrown my belongings into a garbage bag at 2 a.m, kicked me out of the penthouse, and told me to go live in the family warehouse with my own kind trash. He thought he had broken me. He thought I would crawl back begging. He had no idea that the rotting warehouse he banished me to, the building he called a burden, a liability, a dump, was hiding something behind a false wall that would make international headlines and be worth more money than he would ever see in 10 lifetimes. $15 million, sitting in the dark, waiting for someone smart enough to find it, and the person who found it was the sister he threw away like garbage. Before I tell you this entire story, and you need every detail because this is the kind of story that does not feel real until you hear how every single piece fell into place, subscribe to this channel right now. I am serious. Hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, because every single week I tell stories like this. Stories about people who were underestimated, overlooked, thrown away, and came back so hard the people who discarded them could not breathe. If that is your kind of content, then you need to be here. Subscribe now. Also smash that like button and drop a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from. I want to see every country, every city, every corner of this planet lighting up in the comments. You lot are everywhere, and I love every single one of you. All right, let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Andrea. I am 29 years old, and for my entire adult life, I have been the silent partner in a business called Dererick's Ego. Let me explain what that means. When our parents died, I was 19. Dererick was 25. He was the older brother, the man, the self-appointed CEO of our family's tiny estate. He sat me down at the kitchen table 2 days after the funeral. 2 days, I was still wearing black. I still had cemetery dirt on my shoes. And he said, "Andrea, I'm going to handle everything. You are too young, too fragile. I will take the burden. You just focus on school." So the deeds went in his name. The accounts went in his name. The properties went in his name. But the bills... oh, the bills came to me. I remembered the winter the heater broke in the penthouse. Dererick was in Aspen networking. He called me frantic. "We need to fix this, Andrea. It is our home." I paid the $3,000 repair. I remembered when the property taxes on the warehouse were delinquent. He told me, "We are going to lose the family legacy if we do not act." I drained my savings account to pay the county. He loved the word, we. We are building an empire. We are in this together. We need to tighten our belts. But sitting on the floor of that warehouse at 3 a.m. with a garbage bag for a pillow, I finally understood the translation. In a toxic family, "we" is the most dangerous word in the dictionary. It is a trap. When there was a debt, it was ours. When there was profit, it was his. When there was work, it was a family obligation. But when it came to ownership or authority or credit, the WE evaporated instantly. He kept me poor so I would stay dependent. He kept my credit score low so I could never buy my own place. He engineered my desperation so that living in a warehouse would feel like mercy instead of punishment. And his wife Camille, sitting on the sofa giggling while my brother threw my life into a bin bag, she was not a partner. She was an audience. She watched him destroy me like it was content for her live stream. This was not a family. It was a dictatorship, and it was about to fall. The bus dropped me 3 blocks from the industrial district. I stood in front of the warehouse. It was not a building. It was a rotting brick tooth and a mouthful of concrete, barred windows, a peeling for sale sign Dererick had put up months ago. I unlocked the padlock with the spare key on my ring, the only key I had left in the world. Inside, the heat was suffocating, worse than outside, the air thick and stagnant, smelling of old cardboard and neglect. Broken pallets and industrial debris covered the floor. I cleared a corner, kicked aside a rusted paint can, sat down on my garbage bag, and for the first time in 10 years, I stopped moving. Dererick called this place a burden, a rot dragging down his portfolio. He had not set foot inside in 5 years. He was terrified of dirt, Terrified of manual labor, he treated this warehouse like a radioactive zone only useful on a balance sheet, which meant he did not know what was in the corners. He did not know what was behind the walls. He thought he had exiled me to a prison. He did not realize he had just given me sole custody of the only thing he had not ruined yet. 7 days later, temperature hit 104 degrees. The warehouse was an oven. Dererick stormed in wearing a linen suit that probably cost more than my education. He threw a red envelope at my chest. Pay it. Final disconnection notice. Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Amount due $4,000. You have been squatting here for a week and you have not transferred the utilities. Fix it, Andrea. I'm not paying to keep the lights on in a dump. I have not used any power, Dererick. I'm charging my phone with a solar bank. I have not turned on a single light bulb. He did not care. He turned and marched out, desperate to get back to his air-conditioned car. I stood there holding the envelope. My thumb brushed over the usage graph printed on the back, and I stopped. I work in logistics. I analyze data. I look for anomalies. And when I looked at that graph, my brain instantly flagged something wrong. The usage line was not jagged. In a normal building, power consumption fluctuates. It peaks during the day, drops at night, spikes when machines turn on, but this line was flat. A straight horizontal line across the entire month. High consumption, constant draw, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That is not lights. That is not a forgotten refrigerator. That is life support. I walked to the breaker box on the far wall, old industrial panel covered in grime. Most switches taped off and labeled defunct, but one breaker, labeled Zone 4, was hot to the touch. I followed the conduit, up the wall, across the ceiling trusses. It disappeared behind a stack of rotting plywood leaning against the back corner. I pulled the first sheet away. It crashed to the floor in a cloud of dust. Behind it was not brick. It was drywall. Newer drywall. Someone had built a partition, a false wall. I grabbed a crowbar, jammed it into the seam, pulled, the drywall crumbled. A blast of cold air hit my face, freezing, sterile, conditioned air, and with it came a sound, a low, steady hum that had been muffled by insulation. I smashed a hole big enough to step through. I was not looking at a storage closet. I was looking at a climate-controlled vault, pitch black, illuminated only by blinking green LEDs of massive industrial dehumidifiers lining the walls. They were the source of the hum. They were the reason for the $4,000 bill. I raised my flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness and hit something that looked like a giant clear blister, a car capsule, an inflatable storage bubble used to preserve high-end vehicles in a perfect vacuum. There was not just one. There were 12. 12 shimmering bubbles lined up in military precision. I walked to the first one. My flashlight danced over the curve of a fender. Highland green paint, fastback roofline. I knew that car. Everyone knew that car. A 1968 Ford Mustang GT. But not just any Mustang. I saw the dent in the rear bumper. The specific unrepaired damage from a famous chase scene. This was the Bullitt Mustang. I moved to the next bubble. A 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California Spider. The license plate read NRVOUS from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They said the hero car was destroyed. They said it was crushed. It was not crushed. It was hidden. I was not standing in a warehouse anymore. I was standing in a bank vault, and I was the only one who knew the combination. I did not call Dererick. I did not call the power company. I called Graham. Graham was a freight specialist I had worked with 2 years ago on a nightmare logistics contract involving vintage watches headed for Dubai. He did not ask questions. He just knew what things were worth. He pulled up 40 minutes later, stepped through the false wall, his breath caught, then silence. He stood in front of the Bullitt Mustang with his face inches from the plastic bubble. He was not looking at a car. He was looking at a religious artifact. The dent is real, he whispered. The camera mount welds are still on the rocker panels. He moved down the line, checked VIN plates through the plastic, inspected tire treads. His hands were shaking, actually shaking. 20 minutes later, he walked back to me, took off his glasses, wiped them on his shirt. Andrea, do you have any idea what you're standing on? I have a guess. I need a number, Graham. Conservative. If you liquidated quickly to a private buyer, $12 million. My stomach dropped. If we took it to auction, he continued, his voice rising, if we marketed the lost cinema fleet story, $15 million. Easy. Maybe 20. $15 million. Dererick was trying to sell the land for $500,000 to pay off a $200,000 debt. He was throwing away $15 million because he was too lazy and too arrogant to look behind a sheet of plywood. But here is where the logistics brain kicked in. I did not own this building. Dererick did. Everything was in his name, remember? So the contents technically belonged to him. Unless I could change that. I knew something about Dererick that was more valuable than anything in that vault. I knew his arrogance. I knew his laziness. I knew he would sign anything if it meant making a problem go away without him having to lift a finger. So I created a problem. I called him, told him the warehouse might contain hazardous materials, old industrial chemicals, the kind that trigger EPA fines and environmental lawsuits if not disposed of properly. Told him the disposal company needed a liability transfer, a signed document stating that all contents of the warehouse were being transferred to me so I could handle the removal and he would be legally protected. He did not ask questions. He did not read the document. He did not even come to the warehouse. He had his assistant scan the signed form back to me within an hour. Dererick had just signed over everything inside that vault because he thought it was toxic waste. By the next morning, the cars were gone, transported to a secure climate facility by Graham's team under full insurance coverage. 2 weeks later, Dererick closed the sale of the warehouse land, $500,000. He called me gloating. See, Andrea, that is how you do business. $500,000 for a pile of bricks. I am a genius. Congratulations, Dererick. What did you get out of that dump anyway? A tetanus shot? I waited exactly 3 seconds. I got an email from Sotheby's this morning, actually. The Mustang and the Ferrari alone are insured for $15 million. Thank you for signing them over. Silence. The longest silence of my entire life. What did you just say? The contents of the warehouse, Dererick. The ones you legally defined as waste and signed over to me in a binding transfer document. 12 vintage cinema cars, preserved in a climate vault behind a false wall you never bothered to look behind. More silence. That is not. You tricked me. No. I gave you a document and you signed it without reading it. That is not a trick, Dererick. That is a Tuesday in your world. You have been doing it to me for 10 years. He hung up. His lawyer called Margaret, my lawyer, the one I had quietly retained 2 days after he sold my car, and confirmed the contract was airtight. Dererick had explicitly transferred all contents. He had defined them as waste. The signature was his. The witnesses were legitimate. He had no case. He had no cars. He had no leverage. Dererick lost everything. The money from the land sale went to his debts. Camille left him within a month when the lifestyle evaporated. His investor friends disappeared. His reputation crumbled. He tried to sue me twice. Lost both times. The judge in the second case actually quoted Dererick's own words back to him. Legally, it is my property and I liquidated it, and told him that the same principle applied in reverse. He had taught me that lesson himself. He just never expected me to use it. This story is for every person who has been called trash by someone who did not have the vision to see treasure. This story is for every sister, every daughter, every woman who was told she was too young, too fragile, too unimportant to sit at the table, while the people who said it ate the meal she paid for. This story is for everyone who has ever been exiled to a warehouse and discovered that the exile was the gift, that the punishment was the promotion, that the person who threw you away accidentally threw you into exactly where you needed to be. If this story set your blood on fire, hit that like button right now. Not a gentle tap. Smash it. This story deserves it, and so does every person who has ever been underestimated. Subscribe if you are not already part of this family, because I do this every single week and every single story is worth your time. Comment below, where are you watching from? And tell me this. Has anyone ever underestimated you so badly that it became the best thing that ever happened to you? I want to hear your story. Share this video. Send it to the person who needs to hear it. The one who is sleeping on a concrete floor right now, wondering if this is all there is. Tell them to keep looking. Behind the walls, behind the plywood, behind every single thing that looks like nothing. Because sometimes the greatest fortune in the world is hidden behind the thing everyone else was too lazy or too arrogant or too blind to move. You are not trash. You are never trash. You are the treasure they were too stupid to find. I will see you in the next one.